All right, so what are we talking about today? Well, last month, we're talking practical peace building is what we're talking about this month. And last month, I opened by talking about emotional to the next level and talking about not just emotional intelligence for myself, but social intelligence. How do I interact? How do we interact with other people and bring out the best in them? So there are two parts to this. We talk about awareness, and that is where emotional intelligence is the ability to understand, recognize, and manage your own emotions. Social intelligence is understanding other people's. It's the ability to recognize and understand other people's emotions, and it is the aptitude or the ability to influence others through successfully building relationships and navigating social environments. How important is that?
Very important.
Very important, right? This is what we're about. Everything we do is in relationship with other people. Really, just about everything. Other than your centered time by yourself. You know, even then you're in relationship with yourself, you're in relationship with higher power. But this is life. This is how we get along with other people. So I'm going to make a case for the idea that our social intelligence, even though we don't teach it in school, is really probably even more important than your IQ.
Amen.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
IQ is what you learn in school. It's your book smarts.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't know something, you know where you can go to find that information.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that is going to help you in life, you know, in your relationships with your spouse, with your children, with your coworkers, just in general, is really this social emotional intelligence. Because we are social beings.
Absolutely.
We are each wired for connection, each one of us, and I'm going to go into this in a little more detail as we go on today. Strong relationships, good relationships, improve our immunity and buffer us from disease. They actually help us live longer. And it's not just living longer, it's living a quality of life, a good life. Use of social intelligence is what enables parents, teachers, leaders of all kinds to motivate other people to do their best. Right? This is something we all want to be able to do, is to bring out the best in the people around us. And then finally, it is what helps groups overcome division, conflict, and hatred so that we may learn to live in peace. This is a philosophy where we teach oneness. We come from that understanding, from the principle that we are all one, that we are all spirit and expression. This, to me, this part of the teaching, social intelligence, to me, is the how. This is how we act day-to-day life. Right? When you leave your house, when you're with your spouse in the morning, or when you're meeting up with your co-workers or whatever, this is where the rubber meets the road.
Yep. Amen.
So it's really important skills, and I'm very excited to have this platform to be able to teach this, because this isn't stuff that I learned in school.
No.
Most of us didn't learn this kind of stuff in school. We learned how to handle our emotions and how to deal with relationships from other people. And some of those people weren't great at it either. So how do we learn? Through trial and error. Now we've got some science to back up some of the things, well, just about everything that we've talked about in this tradition. So I'm super excited about this. And it's so timely. It's so important right now. The former U.S. Attorney General, I believe his name is Vivek Murthy, said that we are going through a loneliness epidemic. And the study that I'm quoting today came from Cigna. They surveyed more than 20,000 U.S. adults ages 18 and older using a loneliness scale. It's got 20-item questionnaire. This came out in May 2018. And here's what some of the research is showing. That 46%, we're talking almost half, of U.S. adults report sometimes or always feeling lonely. Almost half. That's a huge number. That's a huge number. The health risks of loneliness include diabetes, heart disease, and depression. No surprise there.
No.
It is implicated in the opioid epidemic and increasing suicide rates. Loneliness and social isolation lead to early death, the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. A day. Is that just... It is scary. More than diet, more than exercise, more than smoking. Loneliness will cut your life expectancy. Incredible. And here's the thing that was so mind-blowing to me. Loneliness affects younger Americans more than the elderly. It used to be flipped.
Wow.
It used to be the other way around. Now, the loneliest generation is the generation called Generation Z. Kids from 18 to 22.
Because people aren't listening to them.
Because people aren't listening to them. There's lots of reasons, I'm gonna go over a couple of them today. We're gonna expand on some of that more in the coming weeks. And then Generation X, millennials are next, the 23 to 37, and then Generation X, 38 to 51. Those ages 72 or over are ranked now as the least lonely.
Wow.
Isn't that interesting?
Because they're going to be pushed for the elderly, that's why.
Well, there's lots of reasons, and there's all kinds of opinions on why this is, and there's lots of research happening now. Some people think it has to do with social media, that may be a piece of it, that people are isolating one another. You know, if you go eat in a restaurant and look at the people sitting at the table, how many of them are on their cell phones as they're sitting next to someone right there they could be having a conversation with. Right? It's happening at dinner tables. I mean, teachers are having to collect cell phones, before class, because the kids will be on their phones, or people in meetings, you have to tell folks, shut off your cell phone. So some people think that that's the cause of it. But the Cigna study that I'm referencing here actually says that social media is not nurturing or destroying our relationships. It's not doing either one. In fact, it's not having any impact.
Really?
Wow.
Now, I'm not sure this is true. There's probably more research that needs to come out. But what this study indicates is that what is missing from our lives is meaningful conversation with others. Social media is more of a symptom of the situation rather than a cause, is what this study is showing. Right? People feel isolated, so what are they going to do? They're going to pick up the cell phone. At least I connect with somebody. Maybe somebody's going to like something I posted on Facebook, so they feel a little less lonely. He said, we may be checking Instagram because we're feeling isolated and not spending time with people, but the Instagram feed is not actually causing the isolation. It could be other factors like working too much, not getting enough sleep, not engaging in enough physical activity, and not spending enough time with family and friends. The loneliness epidemic suggests something far bigger, that millions of people are suffering from a crisis of meaning. People need something to live for, some why, a why to get them through the good and the bad of life. And for most people, that something is their relationships with their family, their friends, and their community. Interesting, huh? All right. So here's the thing. We are wired to connect. As human beings, we are wired to connect. If you think about when we're born, we're of any creature in the animal kingdom, a lot of creatures, they're born and they're up and running, right? They're up and walking. Their parent is teaching them how to fend for themselves. How long does it take a human being to launch? And do we do it on our own? No. Right? It takes a pretty good while. See, so we are wired. We have to have these connections. We have to belong. We have to be, or we don't survive. And a lot of this information I'm going to be sharing with you comes from a book called Social Intelligence by Daniel Goleman.
Yes.
We don't have it in our bookstore. I mentioned it last week. If you buy it on Amazon, do it through Smiles, so we get a little something for it. That would be wonderful. But it's great. It's very thick, and about a third of it is references. It's very, very well documented. So he says, our social interactions play a role in reshaping our brain through neuroplasticity. Our key relationships can gradually mold certain neural circuitry. What he's saying there is that our brain, we've got neurons, the neurons connect through these synapses, how they connect, that your relationships can change, can alter the size and shape of those neurons and how many there are and how they connect. It actually changes your brain physiology, your relationship. Right? You feel it, like you know it kind of. There's something in us that knows that intuitively. Now the science is starting to bear it out. I was a psych major, and this stuff wasn't taught 25 years ago when I was in college. They didn't know. This information wasn't out there. In effect, being chronically hurt and angered, or being emotionally nourished by someone we spend time with daily over the course of years can refashion our brains.
Yes.
Now we know this is true for children.
Yes.
Right? Those relationships that we establish with our parent are critical in creating who we are, physiologically, as well as emotionally, spiritually, mentally. That news, okay, the idea that we are physiologically connected to other people and other people's emotions and things can affect us physically, that can be good news for some people. It can be really bad news for others if your relationships tend toward the negative. But the same finding also points to the reparative possibilities from our personal connections at any point in life. What that means is, while toxic relationships, bad relationships can tear you down, relationships that are good can build you up. They can heal you. It's not a one-way street. It goes both ways. So I'll tell you that the overarching, what I want you to take away from this is how important your relationships are. And to not just be in any relationship, but relationships that are going to nurture you. Right? Physically, spiritually, whatever that needs to be. If that means you need to cut some people out of your life, so be it. And there are ways to do that too. There are ways to do that are not ugly necessarily, right? But sometimes that's what we have to do. And start to nurture relationships that are going to build you up, that are going to help you. Thus, how we connect with others has unimagined significance. It's tremendous.
What do you mean unimagined?
Unimagined, like so much that we don't even know. We're just scratching the surface of what this is about. Yeah, there's even more. This is just the beginning of this stuff. I went through this book that's this thick and pulled out, some bits and pieces. There's really a lot of information out there and lots of room for more research. The social brain represents the only biological system in our bodies that continually attunes to and in turn becomes influenced by the internal state of the people we are with. Wow. Hang out with people that are toxic. Hang out with people that bring you down, and it will suck the life out of you, literally and figuratively. And there is actual now evidence that this is happening. That this is what happens to people. Now, what's the mechanism? How does this thing work? Has anyone heard this for mirror neurons?
No.
Yes. So raise your hand if you've heard of this, because I hadn't heard of it before. A few years ago. This was a discovery in the 1990s. I had already graduated college when this came out. The mirror neurons, they are a type of brain cell that responds equally when we perform an action and when we witness someone else perform the same action. It may explain empathy, it may explain autism, the evolution of language, and so much more. Okay, think about it. When you see someone say, what was that show when I was a kid? The sports show where you'd see these people having these horrible tumbles and, people falling and getting hurt. What do? You're watching Wild World of Sports, right? They had the music on and you'd see it. You knew every time what was going to happen. But as soon as the person takes that tumble or some awful thing, what happens to you? You're like, oh, right. You go, oh, but it's not you. Realize that it's not you, but there is something in your brain that reacts when you see someone else in pain. And they are these things, these mirror neurons. It happens with primates. That's how it was discovered. A researcher had these two monkeys. I guess they had the electrodes on them, and they were looking at which parts of their brain lit up. And just by accident, one monkey grabs a banana to eat it, and as he's doing his thing, the other monkey's brain is lighting up as if he too is eating the banana. But he's not. He's watching someone else. He's watching another monkey do it. The same thing happens to us as human beings. We see other people. We have these mirror neurons. It's an actual thing in our brain that mirrors what other people are doing, which is why we can watch someone and learn how to do something through watching them, through seeing them. It's how many times do you catch yourself making a face or something for a baby and they're making the same face? Or one baby in the nursery starts to cry, and they all start to cry. Right? We are literally mirroring one another. We are mirroring one another, and that's the physiological one of the pieces. Anyway, that's just something that's been discovered. There's probably way more. And it causes what we call emotional contagion. How many people knew this? That emotions are far more contagious than any disease. Seth Godin said this. A smile or panic will spread through a group of people faster than any virus ever could.
Makes sense.
How many people know that's true? Laughter is contagious, right? Laughter is contagious. Yawns are contagious. How many things are contagious for people? And we don't know. You just walk into the situation and suddenly you're feeling some kind of way. I know I'm one of those people, and there wasn't a word for it back then, but empaths. How many people consider themselves empaths? You know, so if you consider yourself an empath, you know what this is. You're someone who picks up very easily on other people's emotions and people's feelings. You can walk in a room and people don't have to say anything. Somehow you're picking up feelings of other people. I was a hospice social worker, and being an empath, you know, I'd walk into somebody's house, and if they were down, I was down, hard to pick myself up off the floor sometimes. You know, if they were angry, I'd get pulled into that. If they were happy, real easy for me to be happy. And I felt like I'd walk in, you know, I was at everybody else's mercy. It felt like, you know, I'd get pulled here, I'd get pulled there. If you were in a good mood, great. If you weren't, it was going to be a rough time for me. You know, I was in my early 20s and didn't realize I had any power over that situation. So there was a time, and I shared with this a little bit, my dark night of the soul, when my husband and I were going through a really rough time, and we separated for a little while. And our kids were little. I had 3 little kids, and it was real important to me that my state of mind did not spill over onto my children. So when I needed to cry, I'd take my time and cry by myself. My parents would take the kids. I'd stomp, I'd scream, I'd do whatever I needed to do by myself, get it out of my system. You know, go pick up my kids and, you know, be okay. Well, there was a day that I picked up the phone and I called my mother-in-law. I was feeling a little low, and I got on the phone with her. And I was telling her what was what. And just having a conversation. By the end of the conversation, she goes, "Oh, wow, I feel so much better." And I'm like, I thought I called you so I could feel better. Interesting that is. She feels better. Then I realized, you know, I'd go visit my parents or I'd visit friends or something, and everyone was kind of on pins and needles, you know. They're looking at me to see how I'm feeling.
So they will know.
So they would know how they were going to feel.
Absolutely.
Like, what is going on here? When did I become the driver here? You know, that I could walk in the room and realize that if I was in a mood, if I was down, that I could suck the energy out of that room in you know, pretty quick time. And then the opposite was true too, that I could walk in with a smile on my face, that I could stand outside the door, take a breath, you know, get myself ready, walk in, and it would be okay. Wow, what is this? What is this? Maybe I could stand in my own truth. Maybe I don't need to get pulled every which direction as other people. I just kind of fell into that knowing and understanding. And then I started to own it. I started to own it. When I went to visit one of my patients, I would get myself ready before I walked in. And you know, it doesn't matter where they are. You may be sad, but now I'm going to lift you up. Now I'm going to lift you up. I don't have to get pulled into that pit of despair anymore. You know, and I feel like it's my job when I come here every Sunday morning, no matter what is going on in my life, no matter what drama, what trauma, whatever, I am present, I am here, and I bring it. Yes. this is what I endeavor to do. I don't know that I always do
Yes.
it, but this is my mindset, right?
Yes.
To
Yes.
bring it,
You
to
do it
bring it.
well.
And that is what each and every one of us can do. Wherever
Yes.
you go,
Yes.
wherever you're the ones hearing this message,
Yes.
you now know.
Yeah.
You now know. You don't have to get pulled all these different directions. You can stand in your truth.
Amen. Speak
And
the
know who
word.
you are, and know that where you stand is holy ground.
Right.
Yeah.
That God lives and lives and speaks and breathes
Yeah.
through you. And in that life, emotional contagion. So here is how this works. This is another fascinating thing. Goldman talks about the high road and the low road. Now, when we talked about emotional intelligence, I told you the model of the brain, right? We've got if this is your brain, okay, this is the brain stem,
Yeah.
right? Then you've got this piece is your midbrain, and then this is your cortex, your higher thinking brain. So the brain stem is the part of your brain that does the automatic stuff. You don't have to think about breathing. You don't have to think about your heartbeat. You don't have to think about digesting your food. All that stuff is done automatically. That's brainstem stuff. Okay? Something happens to your brainstem, lights out. Okay, that's it. Now your midbrain is where it's called your amygdala. That's your fight or flight. That's what deals with survival. That's what your feelings are. You know, it's kind of a messy place.
Yeah.
Then you've got your cortex, which is your higher thinking. That's where logic and reason and language reside. So Goldman says there are two things going on in our anatomy at the same time. There's the high road and there's the low road. And they're both happening simultaneously. The low road, which he calls contagion central, right? Contagion central, is where the amygdala is. That is driven by the midbrain. That's the feeling part, the emotional part of your brain. That's what drives the low road. That circuitry operates automatically beneath conscious awareness. It is effortless and it moves fast. It's very, very fast. It's like when you walk in and you get the feel for the room. You don't have to think about it, you just know. It's lightning quick.
Yeah.
But it's not always accurate.
Right.
Right?
Right. Yeah.
How many of you know your feelings are not always accurate?
Yeah. True.
Okay. It deals with raw emotions, but it allows us to feel other people. There's an experiment he mentions in the book where this person was blind due to, I think it was something going on in his brain, like his eyes could still take in the information, but there was a disconnect between the brain, so he had no vision, but he could feel. It was like his eyes were still taking in the information, and somehow he could tap into the feelings of other people, though he couldn't see with his physical eyes. It's fascinating stuff. It's just mind-blowing. Anyway, the low road, contagion central. The high road is driven by the cerebral cortex. That's that thinking part, higher thinking part of our brain. It works methodically and with deliberate effort. And it is what gives us control over our inner lives so that we can now think about and interpret what it is that we're feeling. So when I was out doing a little jog the other day and someone came up behind me and scared the heck out of me, you know, I could then, think for a second, turn around and realize, oh, this person doesn't mean me any danger. Instead of wailing back and popping somebody in the face. It would have been a reaction. It would have been a reaction that totally, not in line with what was happening. It takes the thinking part of the brain to look at that situation and say, oh, okay, this is where I'm at. This is what I need to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
For everyone, right? So many of us are driven just by that midbrain. It's fear, and you go into reaction mode. What we do here, what we're trying to share with you here at Centers for Spiritual Living, really any spiritual practice, is to have you tune in a little bit more to that higher thinking, right? Where you get to reason, and think things through. Think things through. But we need both of them. It's not that one of them is better than the other. We need both of them. You know, otherwise we'd be like what's the character, the Vulcan guy? You know, Spock, all head, you know, all cerebral. Yes?
Is it appropriate to ask a question?
Sure, ask a question.
All right. Can your high road be very aware of your low road and helping you deal with things?
The question was, can your high road be aware of the low road
and
help
coordinate?
and coordinate and help? Absolutely. I would say that's the goal here, is that we want to understand what they both are and balance and use them both.
Okay.
Use them both. The high road is kind of that airy, you know, I look over everything.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of way. The low road is a little messy, a little dirty, but it's where life happens.
Yeah.
Well, both of them are where life happens, really.
Yes, yeah.
Really, but it is the interplay of both. And the social intelligence is understanding how to modulate and how to use those two.
Yeah. Okay.
I may be the only one that gets angry about something and then takes it out on something else.
Brady said he might be the only one who gets angry about something and takes it out on someone else.
Or something else.
Or something else.
Coordinating.
Right.
Why am I angry? Why am
Very
I
good.
really angry?
Thanks, hon. You know, my life is my laboratory. So this week gave us some challenges, and we did have some challenges.
Should we have a room, silent room, where we can scream and hit things?
Should we have a silent room where we could scream and hit things? It's probably not a bad idea.
Okay,
Probably
good.
not a bad idea.
I'll be building one.
Well, Grady and I had some opportunities this week to work the stuff. Right? We had good opportunity. We were in the fog. He had a rough day at work. I had a wonderful day at home. He walked in the door and brought all that stuff. All that stuff. And I had a hard time, I'll be honest. I had a hard time holding my home. So I had to go elsewhere. I don't have the padded room. I have Jervy Gant. I have trees. I have those places I go and I get it out. Yes, another question.
I think it's important for people to understand that when we give unbridled release to rage and anger, we do not get it out.
Thank you, Kelly.
We create more and more of it.
Yes.
What we need is a quiet meditation place to go think about it and come to a resolution by creating positive chemicals and relaxing things instead of creating more and more rage.
I agree.
Excellent.
Expression is.
I'm gonna reiterate that so that it's heard on the recording and so people at home can hear that. What Kelly said, our resident psychologist,
Thank you, Kelly.
that giving voice to unbridled anger and rage, while we think we're venting, we're just getting it out. We're not getting it out. We're not getting it out. And what we have done is created a contagion. Again, we create more of it. That what we need to do instead is come back to our centered space.
Meditate.
Right? To that meditative space, to find that quiet place within you and get yourself back to center.
So instead of a screaming room, you have a meditation room.
Instead of a screaming room, have a meditation room.
I like that.
Have a
Okay.
meditation room.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Excellent.
Can I have the broom and beat a tree or something? Just every once in a while.
Every once in a while, yeah, we just feel that sometimes you do want to get it out. I mean, I have worked through some of my anger and things like that. Just go to the gym instead of beating somebody else up. I can do it, my imagination. Work it out. Yes.
We talked about the St. Francis prayer last week.
The St. Francis prayer.
I use that every day, every morning to center myself, to prepare for the guy that cuts me off.
Yes.
And then I become an instrument of thy peace.
Can you repeat it?
Because
I was not
they
here.
come in and it's like,
Yes.
when you do something good to me, that doesn't make me an instrument of thy peace.
Yes.
It's when something happens. That's my opportunity.
Great, terrific. What Mark said is that he uses the prayer of St. Francis that I used last week as his mantra, his place to center himself in the morning. It's very easy to be peaceful when you're all by yourself.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
It becomes a little more challenging when we bump up against other people. Especially when they're coming with their baggage. They don't know about this emotional contagion and they don't really care.
Right.
Right? They're just getting whatever they feel like they need to get out of their system.
Yep.
And you sometimes are the unfortunate recipient of that. But I want you to understand that you can steal yourself from that. You know, you can have that protective bubble, of light, love, that you can be that center that radiates out to other people. Protect yourself and uplift the people around you. Wow, what an idea.
Amen.
That's why we are a community here. I said we're light workers and peace workers and spiritual activists and rainbow warriors or whatever you want to call yourself. Yes, another question.
One more thing that you mentioned before also is recognizing there's the stimulus and we have that space and how we
Yes.
respond. So even though the stimulus may spark the emotion, we don't necessarily have to act on it.
Excellent, yes. What Brian's referring to was my quote for last month, which was between stimulus and response, there is a space.
Yeah.
And in that space is your power to choose your response. And in that response is your freedom and your growth. That is high road thinking. Right? The stimulus is the low road. That's the thing that happened. That's where the feeling comes in. Then you go to the high road and think, okay, what am I going to do with this? Right? What is my response going to be? Not reacting, but how am I going to respond? So high road versus low road. Emotional contagion does more than spread feelings. It automatically prepares the brain for appropriate action. That is, to feel with stirs us to act for. Right? To feel with somebody else stirs us to act on their behalf. This is what we're wired to do. This is why the babies, when one cries, the other one wants to reach out and help. This is what we are wired for. The primal brain-to-brain link makes us experience another's suffering as our own and immediately prepare to help. The more we feel with that other person, the more we want to help them.
Amen.
Yep.
This is our natural wiring. This is our natural wiring. I know people are looking and they're going, no. I mean, I heard a conversation the other day. My daughter-in-law and a friend were saying that, are some people just born evil? Maybe some people just don't get this. Somehow they're cracked, they're just not right. You know,
Yeah.
that's not our philosophy. Really. And that's not what I believe. And that's not what the science bears out. That's not what it's saying. It's saying that we are all wired for this. Again, we come in this world as infants completely, utterly helpless.
Yeah. Yeah.
We need relationships with other people. We are wired to connect. We are wired to bond with others.
Amen.
Right? But then if that's the truth, how is it that we're seeing this mess?
Yes.
Right? Every time you get on the news or you read the paper or you're on Facebook, it doesn't take much. You go outside, somebody will do something, some stupid kind of something.
Yeah.
Right? What happens if our natural state, if who we really are is to be wired for compassion, for love, for empathy and kindness, where's the breakdown?
Good question.
Goleman says it's you versus it. What happens, what we do, is that we stop looking at other people as people.
Yes.
Right? We stop looking, and he uses an example. It was a friend of his who had just lost a family member, and she gets a phone call from somebody who's doing their what do you do when you want to offer condolences, right? A condolence call.
Okay.
So he's saying the words, and in the background she can hear that he's on his computer at the same time. So it's hollow. Right?
Yes.
So maybe high road was saying these are the words,
Yeah.
but low road is saying I don't really care.
Yeah.
I'm just doing what I have to do.
Yeah.
Right? And people know that. We pick up on that. So better to not make the phone
Better
call if
to
you're
not
not in
do
a
that at all.
space.
Yeah.
Better
Amen.
to not do that.
Yeah.
Okay?
Absolutely.
So that is one level of how we see people as something other than, not seeing you as a human being, just something else on my to-do list. Another thing I have to check off. Right? I have to go visit so-and-so. Let me check that off my list. Not because I want to, but because it's an obligation. Right? Anybody have those kind of things?
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah. What if you really hate them?
Go back to that meditation room. Now it's that is on the low end of it. That's on the low end. It gets much, much more insidious. And we are all subject to this. I'm not calling out anybody. I'm not saying that I haven't done this myself. Brene Brown says it very, very powerfully in her latest book. I think it's called Braving the Wilderness. It's dehumanization is what it is. And on the other end of the spectrum, where we are looking at human beings as less than human beings.
Yeah.
Dehumanization is the process by which we become accepting of violations against human nature, the human spirit, and for many of us, violations against the central tenets of our faith. Now, what am I talking about here? I'm talking about when we put whole groups of people in a box.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We see it politically as the big one. That one's real easy.
Yeah.
Right? When we put people that are from whatever party they happen to be in a box, and we say, this is who they are, and somehow they're not worth as much as we are, as I am. This is what we say. She says there is a line, and I wholeheartedly agree with this. It is etched with dignity. We must never tolerate dehumanization. It is the primary instrument of violence that has been used in every genocide recorded throughout history and makes atrocities like slavery, torture, and human trafficking possible. Think about this.
Yeah.
Think about this.
Yeah.
The Holocaust, things like the Holocaust that happened, whole groups of people were made to, people believe them to be less than human. Right? Talking about infestation, called them roaches, horrible, horrible things. What did we do as a nation to Native Americans? We called them savages. No longer human beings.
Okay.
Somehow savage, less than human. Right?
Yep.
We're doing this today. You know, they're no longer people, they're illegal. Illegals. Right? How many names do we give? The people on the opposite political party. You know, I have friends on both sides of the spectrum. I have family on both sides. Right? And people they're not speaking to each other. You know, parents and children, brothers, sisters, not speaking because they're on opposite sides of the political spectrum. You know, and somehow that side's a basket of deplorables. You know, and this side cares about no one and nothing. It's just, it's wrong. It's wrong on so many levels. You know, and you can't get upset because someone's calling out your candidate or who you love as president and not get upset on the other side of it. Right? We all need to hold ourselves to this and remember that human beings are human beings.
Yes.
All of us.
Right? All of us. All of us. And this is my call to you all as light workers and healers, right? To not partake in that.
Yes.
To not be part of that. Remember that we are all human beings. Yes.
It's important to act on that because when you tolerate it, you don't stand up and say, that's not acceptable, and you collude with that indignity.
Thank you. Yes. Our silence can be colluding with that. It adds to it. You know, it makes it like it's acceptable.
So what do we do?
We also,
She says, when we engage in dehumanizing rhetoric or promote dehumanizing images, we diminish our own humanity in the process. Okay. So yes.
Kate got a question.
So what do we do?
Yes.
We don't do it, for one, we don't do it, and be a stand for peace. Be a stand for common unity. Be a stand for decency. That's it. Yes.
it's going on and continues to and probably will formally in the military. I've never served, but it helps to take the enemy and turn them less than human. We train people to do
It
that
happens in
because
a lot of
war
realms.
easier.
Yeah, it makes war easier.
And I don't know-
It happens in lots of different
Yeah,
realms.
sure.
I don't want to take us off on that tangent, but I want you to be aware of it because I too have done it. You know, I
Sure,
posted
we've
things
all
that
done
I posted something on Facebook and had somebody send me right away something back. You know, how could you say that you're a minister? And, you know, I had to look at it and say, you know what? I wasn't looking at where it came from. You know, stupid things this group says, or something like that. I wasn't looking at that, and that was never my intent. So we need to all police ourselves, right? We need to police ourselves and just not partake in it. Just not partake. Yes.
You know what I do? In answer to your question, Kate, I remember that they're God expressing too. And the
They're
minute
what?
they're God expressing as well. So if I know that God's everywhere and God's where I'm at, then God's got to be where that person is too. And if that's the case, then I treat them as God, and it changes the way I look at them. Even if they don't know that they're God expressing yet, they're not aware of that knowledge yet because they're not in this teaching. If I know that and I hold that space for them, I'm telling you, the way they react to me is completely different and it changes. Yes.
Boy, it sounds like this needs to be a workshop. I
Yeah.
didn't know. I thought I was going to do a session here as a Q&A one of these days. I
I'll
didn't
sign
realize it
up.
was going to be
Yes.
today. Kelly.
Do it.
We cannot watch violence on the movies, on television, and on computer without being fundamentally and even physiologically changed by that experience.
You're absolutely right. So
That's what
let me,
we're
for
doing.
again, for the benefit of the people that are, not hearing this mic'd up, Donna said what she does is that she reminds herself that each individual is spirit and expression, right? That we are all walking holy ground. And if nothing else, it may not change how they react in the moment to her, but it changes her.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right? Changes her at the level of her physiology. So it will change you, right? When you remind yourself that others are spirit and expression, that others are worthy of love and compassion just like you, it changes you.
And
It
more
changes
of us
you.
need to do that.
Right.
The more of us that
You
do
bet.
that,
And
the
then
more
Kelly
of us.
said,
You bet.
I want to say what Kelly spoke of, because you brought up a great point that I meant to bring up earlier, is that our mind doesn't know the difference between something imagined and something we actually experience. Again, if your brain is reacting to things that other people are doing, those mirror neurons, they're reacting as if you're having that experience. Imagine what you're doing to yourself when you sit in a movie theater and you're watching these movies with violence, and it desensitizes us. On some level, you are still experiencing that physiologically. So be careful what you allow into your mind. You're responsible not only for what you put out there, but for what you allow in, for what you take in.
Yes, yes.
For what you take in. So be careful with this. And I invite us all, every one of you who considers yourself a healer in some way or another, to not partake in that kind of behavior, right? Of dehumanizing other people. Remember, we are all of us human beings. We may look different, we may have different shapes, we may have different sizes, we have different beliefs, different histories, but we are all human beings, part of that same human family. And I'll include a couple more. Yes.
To me, it just boils down to one thing, which is what God wants is just love. We just need to have love for everybody, not to make you right or not to be right ourselves, but just to have love and look at them with love.
Yes. Yes. It's Carrie, right? Carrie said, we are love, be love. Remember that.
We should
People
always
as love.
be
That is the
love.
truth of who we are, is to be love and to bring that. And we are the ones who are we're the ones waking up here.
Yeah.
Right? Trying to wake ourselves up here.
Yep.
Remember that for yourself. You have no control over other people.
Yes.
Right? All you have control over is what you bring to the party.
Yes.
Who you are. Yes. One more.
If you're Holy Spirit, does that mean you're a God?
Quite a question. Aiden said, if you are Holy Spirit, does that mean you are God? And that is what we teach. We are not the all of God, but we are each and every one of us Spirit. We are God in expression. We are part of God. Right? Just like every drop of water is part of the ocean, and all together it makes up the ocean, we are each like a drop of God stuff. Each one of us together. Right. We're not the all of it, but we are all God stuff. Yeah, that's what we teach. We can't be anything else. And if God, think about it logically, here is that high brain, high road thinking. High road thinking. If God is what we say it is, right? God is all present, all powerful, everywhere present, everywhere. Right? All powerful, all knowing, all means all.
Right.
All, you can't keep it out if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Right? Just because we don't say a prayer in school doesn't mean that God's not there.
Yes.
Now you may not always be present to the feeling of it. You may not always feel like you're embodying that. You may not always feel that connection. But the fact is it's always there. We are always part of that. We can't be anything else.
We can't be an ocean without the
We can't be, say it again?
an ocean without the water drop next to it.
That's right. We can't be we can't be the ocean without that drop of water next to us.
We're all together.
Okay. This goes back to that statement. James Baldwin, and also, it was a quote I saw from the Brene Brown book, where he said, I imagine one of the reasons people cling to their hate so strongly is because they sense once that hate is gone, they will be forced to deal with pain.
Yes. Yes.
I don't know why that brings me to tears to think of that. Right? But behind all of that hate and anger that you are seeing is people in pain, in deep pain, that don't want to feel any more pain. Don't want to feel their own, don't want to feel anybody else's.
And don't know what to do about it.
And don't know what to do with it.
Don't know what to do.
Don't know what to do with it. Right? So again, we get back to that crisis of meaninglessness, right? And lack of purpose. Which we're going to talk about some more next week. Ernest Holmes said this: we can have no understanding of divine compassion unless we ourselves first exercise compassion.
Yes.
The very judgment by which we judge others becomes a self-judgment. Think about those mirror neurons. Right? And that emphasis, I didn't add it, that was what he wrote. And for those who are new to this teaching, Ernest Holmes is the founder of what we teach here. It is as if the law of life were giving back to each one of us exactly what we have projected into it. As though everything that goes out from us must again return by that law of action and reaction.
Amen.
Right? Cause and effect. What we put out there is going to come back to us. So you be conscious of who you are, that where you are, God is, each and every one of us. And take that with you as you leave here. And if the people around you don't know that's the truth of who they are, you can know it for them.
Yes.
And they may not know what's happening, they just know that somehow they feel a little bit better in your presence. Something about you makes them feel better. Right? They don't know why, they don't know how, they just know that they do. Because it's that feeling nature of us that's tapping into who you are and what you bring. So be that. Where we are, God is. Remember that. That brings us to our affirmation.